All right. Hi. So yeah, as usual, I'm right before lunch, so I'll won't hold you up. Yeah. When Mika invited me to do this, of course I was super excited. I addressed PDF a number of years ago, had an amazing experience, met a lot of wonderful people. But then, of course, I started getting a bit intimidated. After all, what am I going to tell you about Facebook that you don't already know? We all get it, right? It has more than 2.2 billion users around the world, more than 220 million users in the United States. We know why people use Facebook. It's for the puppies, right? We know that Facebook is how we keep up with our friends' puppies and children and our friends and our friends' friends and our friends' friends' friends. But we also know that, oh, by the way, this is Butter. Butter's now 4 years old, as you can see by the 4 years ago thing. Golden Butter 2013 on Instagram, if you're interested. She's a bit internet famous. We also know that Facebook has, of course, been embraced by some rather nasty, dangerous nationalist leaders, many of whom are responsible for overseeing the deaths of thousands of people. And yet they have learned to use Facebook quite effectively in their propaganda efforts, both within their countries and beyond. And we know that the practice of using Facebook has gotten quite adept to the point where folks you wouldn't expect to appeal to a Democratic or Republican electorate managed to exploit Facebook in some pretty profound ways, and it continued to wreak havoc throughout their nation states. We also know that Facebook is in partnerships with governments run by people like this, partnerships that are doing things like building out fiber optic cable systems among islands in this particular island nation. So I don't have to tell you all that. In fact, I'm even more intimidated, right? I got more intimidated, not just by your knowledge base, but by this lineup this morning, because I found out, of course, that I'm following Chris Hughes. And, you know, I could just imagine like Chris Hughes firing up Snapchat and saying, hey, Mark, you won't believe what this guy's saying about you, right? Oh, you don't think they use Snap? You don't think they snap? G-Chat, okay. So, I decided I'm not actually going to talk about this book that actually just came out this week quite so directly. If you're interested, you might, you can check it out upstairs. I'm going to tell you about a book I didn't write, a book I thought I was going to write, until, November 2016. It's a book I was going to call Be Evil. And it was, not surprisingly, inspired by the work I had done on a previous book, a book that came out in 2011 called The Googleization of Everything and Why We Should Worry. In the process of researching that book, I was trying to get my mind around not only how special Google was as a corporate culture and how special Google is in our lives, and Google's very explicit promise that it exists in the world to make our lives better. Right? After all, Google's mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And every time that I heard that statement or read that statement, my immediate reaction was, who asked you guys? Right? Who asked you guys? Why is it your job? And by the way, that mission statement pretty much from the dawn of Google, which is 20 years ago this year, right? This wasn't a mature mission statement that came about once they figured out how good they could build their thing. This was their mission statement from the beginning. It's a really remarkable story. Again, I don't have to tell you the story. You know it all too well. But I was trying to figure out, oh my gosh, like at what point did we decide that problems should be solved by companies? Problems should be solved by young companies. Problems should be solved by young companies run by very young people. Right? Is that the right way to proceed when our problems are so deep and our problems are so global and our problems are so bold? And then one day in the summer of 2010, so I'm wrapping up the manuscript, and I've been wrestling with this question of Google's corporate mission. And this question of Google's pledged benevolence, right? Don't be evil. And I kept thinking, the thing is, there is a fine line between not being evil and believing you can do no wrong. Unfortunately, I didn't think of that line quickly enough to put it in the manuscript. So you'll have to, this is the best you're going to do with that line. I'm summer of 2010. It's a July day in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's about 102 degrees. And I am a driving cliche, all right? I am in a Toyota Prius. Imagine me in a Toyota Prius, right? I am very uncomfortable. It's also 102 degrees outside. And I'm stuck in traffic on US 29, and I'm not making this up, a Toyota Prius with a Yes We Can sticker and an NPR sticker, and I'm stuck in traffic on my way to Whole Foods to buy fair trade coffee. I'm a driving cliche. And I'm looking at myself in this situation, and I'm stuck in traffic, and I'm surrounded by pickup truck, SUV, pickup truck, SUV, SUV, pickup truck, pickup truck. I'm thinking, am I making the world cooler? And I look down at my dashboard, and it's 102 degrees outside, and yet I'm getting 52 miles a gallon. And I don't think those numbers are correlated. I don't think my 52 miles a gallon is helping drop that temperature. And I'm thinking, in the time that it takes for me to go from my house to Whole Foods to buy fair trade coffee, how many thousands of two-stroke engines have been sold by the emerging middle class in India? How many thousands of automobiles are sold every day in the People's Republic of China with its burgeoning middle class? Even if everybody in my town, everybody in my state, everybody in my country bought a Toyota Prius or something similar, I'm not sure we would scratch the problem. I'm not sure we would make that much of a difference. And so I started thinking about what my motivations are here. Was I acting politically, or were my actions merely stunts, performances? Was I doing what I could? Or was I just being self-satisfied with my Prius, which was very uncomfortable, by the way? All right, so I decided I was gonna map out a book, right? My post-Google book was going to be about corporate social responsibility. It was going to be about its limits, perhaps the extent to which it depoliticizes us, the extent to which it transforms us from citizens into consumers, or at least conflates those roles of consumer and citizen. And this was worrying me. So I mapped out a number of case studies. I was going to look at Starbucks, and I was going to look at Whole Foods, and I was going to look at Unilever and Philips, the Dutch company, which does a lot of interesting work with different water engineering programs. I was going to look at Hobby Lobby, and of course I was going to look at Facebook. And wait, did he say Hobby Lobby? Right? Do you think of Hobby Lobby as an example of a company engaged in corporate social responsibility? Well, my argument was that actually Hobby Lobby is one of the most responsible corporations in America from its point of view of responsibility. Hobby Lobby is a privately owned company. Hobby Lobby took a strong political stand all the way to the Supreme Court to make sure that its employees did not have access to insurance-funded birth control. Because the owners of Hobby Lobby deeply believe that birth control is bad for people. And they did not want to contribute to what they saw as the degradation of society. Now, if you happen to agree with Hobby Lobby, I don't guess you do, I don't, but you can imagine that there are those who do. From that point of view, Hobby Lobby is incredibly socially responsible. It has a value, it executed its value, it put its reputation at risk, it drove consumers to its competitors, and it was okay with that. It took a loss in the market to win at the Supreme Court and got a law created by a duly elected Congress that was representing the interests of the citizens of the United States. Man, if that's what a company can do, not just the legal story, that's a whole other thing. But this idea that you have one company that sees this value as an expression of social responsibility, and you have companies like Disney, and companies like Coca-Cola, and companies like Google, and companies like Microsoft that have a very different view of issues like that. Where are we as a society? How do we confront our values? How do we distill our values? How do we compromise? when our values clash? How do we move forward as a republic? All we have is incoherence. So I saw the field of corporate social responsibility as one that basically not only depoliticizes, but generates incoherence. That would have been a great book for the Hillary Clinton era, right? But again, November 2016, it's a different story. And so I flipped it. Instead of a book about corporate social responsibility with a chapter on Facebook, I wrote a book about Facebook with a chapter on corporate social responsibility. And it goes something like this. Facebook has always been about building community and relationships, Mark Zuckerberg said at the 2016 Facebook Social Good Forum. And in recent years, it's become clear that the core part of helping grow a community is helping to keep you safe. Now, that's an odd claim for an internet company. How can a company that traffics in data keep a person, let alone a community, safe in the face of floods, hurricanes, fires, or terrorist attacks? Well, Zuckerberg cited two programs that he asserts will help. The first is Safety Check, through which people in an affected area, provided they have data access, can alert friends that they are safe. Finally, when a crisis hits, Zuckerberg wrote, we're also building tools within Facebook that let people raise money and awareness to help rebuild their communities, right? You're familiar with these as we saw hurricanes roll through this country last year, 3 major ones. We still have fellow citizens suffering deeply from them. We saw, if you're on Facebook, and I assume you are, a number of efforts, a number of examples of both of these efforts, although it took a while for people in Puerto Rico to get the data connection to alert people as to their well-being. Now, this is an almost perfect distillation of the ideology of corporate social responsibility. A company is willing to provide services that the state can't or won't provide. Those services don't directly benefit the company, except, of course, that people might spend more time with Facebook than they would otherwise, but I'm willing to put that to the side. Those who run and work for the company receive an invisible wage in the form of self-satisfaction. Because the service costs those who use it nothing, and more importantly, costs the state or the public nothing, there will be little and no one demands accountability. Few will examine the effectiveness or the externalities of such a program. After all, it is free, and it's better than nothing. Such firm belief in one's righteousness is both liberating and powerful. It can create a public message that generates admiration from users, consumers, regulators, workers, and competitors. But of course, it has the danger of crowding out essential state action or multi-state action that might make a difference in a situation like that. We saw this, by the way, after Hurricane Katrina, when FEMA and other government organizations, and including the NGOs like the Red Cross, were incapable of delivering water to affected communities. And Walmart got its act together and delivered water and managed to have tremendous news coverage about that, to the point where if you follow libertarian blogs or magazines like Reason, that became an argument against FEMA, against having a FEMA, because after all, Walmart can take care of us in the case of the next big hurricane. All right, so it hasn't all gone swimmingly. One of the major efforts that Facebook has been putting out in terms of corporate social responsibility is Free Basics. Free Basics is a very clever platform through which people in developing nations in which the average spending power can't necessarily pay for large amounts of data, can use specific apps that Facebook approves with zero data cost, right? It's a really neat idea, and so far it's rolled out in at least 60 countries around the world. Some of the countries where it has encountered tremendous take-up and has made a huge difference in daily life include the Philippines, Cambodia, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Kenya. I think you might see a pattern here. When the entire information ecosystem becomes dominated by Facebook, the maladies that we have already identified in Facebook become amplified that much more. That's a serious problem. It's a problem that stems directly from the benevolence of the company. Not from anything nefarious, but from benevolence. Now, it turns out in India, it didn't go so well. Their effort to roll out free basics basically failed because regulators saw the zero rating plan as a pretty serious violation of network neutrality. India has a mature technology industry, a lot of interest groups willing to step up. They're also very sensitive to any hint of imperialism. And this thing sounded not only missionary, but imperialistic. And so there was tremendous blowback in India. You might know that story as well. To sum up my book, with all of the efforts that Facebook has put forth in the last year to clean up its act, to cleanse our news feeds, I see these as fundamentally cosmetic moves, possibly beneficial, but of limited impact. When the problem with Facebook is Facebook, if you are going to try to connect 2.2 billion people, it might actually be 2.3 billion by today, you're going to have an algorithmic system that favors items that generate strong emotions or engagement, the preferred term of art. And you're going to have an advertising system that works more efficiently, effectively, inexpensively, and powerfully than any advertising system ever made. You're going to have tremendous negative impact on the rest of the world. That's what we've seen. The problems we've seen with Facebook do not come from the margins. They come from the core functions of Facebook. Well, Facebook still provides us things we dig, and is expanding its influence into other areas of things we dig. Some things that could be really important, some things could be really enlightening. So we are going to have to, as citizens, question whether we want this company to grow bigger and more powerful, or whether we want to rein it in a serious way, perhaps limit its influence and limit its power. You won't be surprised to know that that is my argument. Anyway, thank you very much. Let's have a good conversation. Yep.
So let me just say, because we're almost heading into lunch, that we don't have time for a lot of Q&A now. Siva is going to do a book signing, and there's an afternoon workshop. I also just want to say that we're going to hear tomorrow from Samid Chakrabarty, who's one of the lead product managers at Facebook, involved in a lot of the work that is going on inside the company now to address a lot of the questions that you've just heard about. And so we're looking forward to that talk as well, and we're glad that Samid is here, as well as a number of his other colleagues. This is a place where we're going to get into this dialogue in a serious way. My one very quick question to you, because we are standing in the way of lunch, is just to preview this afternoon workshop. Do you, whether it's antitrust or tougher privacy law or some kind of stronger human rights convention, do you think that that the ideas, the fixes, if you will, to this very challenging problem, have we dreamt them up yet, or we have to push further?
Right. So antitrust and stronger data protection are necessary but insufficient interventions. I'm standing on the position that there's almost nothing we can do, but I hope I'm wrong, right? In fact, I want to be wrong. I want someone in this room to prove I'm wrong. I want to spark enough criticism, enough further thought, and enough supplementary work from what I offer so that somebody comes up with some interventions that I am incapable of imagining.
Great. Well, that's a good teaser for this afternoon's workshop, which is all that I was hoping for. Thank you, Siva. Let me